Welcome to r/cheating_stories, where we get to hear people's experience with cheaters. I still suffer from anxiety dreams from an affair that turned into an episode of Black Mirror. 5 years ago I left a passionately intense 6-month relationship with somebody I had known for 13 years because, as I'd later discover by accident, this guy I was seeing almost daily was also secretly seeing somebody else simultaneously, who uncannily resembled me, but was 13 years younger than me, and was 27 years younger than him. The secret affair was inadvertently played out real time on social media on her accounts. He wasn't regularly active on social media at the time, but the few posts he did share on Facebook, she would like, and occasionally comment on. By discovering her name on Facebook, you could type it into Twitter and Instagram, and it was there it became evident something totally uncanny was happening. It turned into a Black Mirror episode the more I dug, and I became some sort of unwilling digital detective. You see, he didn't know about her updates and I don't think she knew about me. I could retroactively piece together that all the activities that I was doing with him, down to the specific dishes we shared at those special restaurants, the local cafes we used to read books to one another at, the recreational activities we did together, etc. he was also doing with her, sometimes literally on the same day. She wasn't sharing photos of his likeness, but were photos of the same types of coffee and croissant with his hand visible, or a photo of her smiling flirtatiously from the top of a hike him and I would do, or a photo of the book he was reading to me, and a bottle of the same San Pellegrino he would order. They were photos of all the places him and I would go to together, with a simple, yet suggestive caption hinting that she was craving her next date with him. They were secret love letters. And here's the kicker. I remember discovering this about 4 months in, recognizing that the one night I'm not there with him due to a family emergency is the one day she is updating her Instagram with a photo of lattes and croissants, the very breakfast him and I would share from the very cafe down the street we would go to. At the time he practically moved into the house I was house sitting for, complete with packed bags of clothing. When I met up with him back at the house later that day, I carefully broached the topic with him later that afternoon, using the phrase "we're not being honest with one another" as I wasn't honest I had been snooping, and he wasn't honest about seeing someone else. The weird thing is, we had known each other for 13 years by this point, so he wasn't a stranger. We were both relatively fresh out of long-term relationships. We had developed a fondness for one another, based on a passion for the same things, the same aesthetic, the same taste in music, in linguistics, in academics, in travel, in adventure, in writing, art, and film. And for those 4 months, he included me in everything, and introduced me to everyone important to him. We went on all sorts of weekend trips together. It was the most intense few months I've ever experienced, and I likened the whole experience to being on a drug. I imagine it's the feeling of finally getting together with a rock star or movie star, somebody you've had a crush on for most of your adult life, somebody you've written off as being effectively out of your reach, never thinking you'd actually get together, and when you do, it's like you can never get enough of one another, and every day you're off doing something exciting, and sharing music, and playing piano, and stimulating your brains, your body, and mind. And then poof, it ended. I ended it. I had to. I couldn't handle the deceit. He admitted she was in love with him, and he couldn't be in a relationship with her. She was too young, but they wanted to work on projects together, and they had plans. She was an actress, you see. He worked in the film industry, but wanted to become an actor. I knew, right then, my relationship with him was doomed. But like any drug, you can't just quit cold turkey. So we kept going. And he didn't know my sources of how I knew. And every day, I would look at her accounts, like a sick and twisted Black Mirror episode, and see exact words he had spoken to me, being quoted by her. I would give him an obscure recommendation for a documentary, for example, and within 24 hours, she was now following that obscure documentarian on social media. It was messed up. It messed me up. It got ugly before it ended. I won't even go into the details, but the deceit was there until the very end. I had to cut myself out of the picture because I couldn't deal with it anymore. Despite the intensity and overwhelming drug-like addiction the whole affair turned out to be, I've moved on, or so I thought. I'm in a new relationship. I've bought a house. I'm in my dream job in media. But last night I had an anxiety dream with him in it. Oh, and they're still together, living out their dream relationship on social media. They're making movies together and living together. I'm happy for them. But I do wonder, does she know? Boyfriend of 6 years leaves me for a Subaho. Well shit. I really did not expect this to get blown up like this. I'm so thankful for everyone's input and kind words. I'm not alone in this, and that makes me want to cry a little. Thank you all so much. You're all amazing and strong. If this helps anyone out there, then I can feel a little bit more positive about all of this. Edit 1. Also trigger warning, I completely forgot to put this in prior. I do mention depression and self-ending toward the end of my post. Apologies. Edit 2. To clarify, I used our current ages to tell this. When we first met I was 18 turning 19 in college, and he was 23. Edit 3. Yes, this is the skeleton of my story. There is so much more that I haven't shared that happened. If you'd like I can share that as well. I'm an open book about this. This one is a doozy, so I apologize for the rant, but it's something I need to get off my chest and get insight on from people not connected to me. I'll start this off by saying my phone ex-boyfriend, 31, and myself, 26, were in a RLDR for a couple of years before moving in together. We met through texting. I messaged him accidentally and well, it went from there. We dated for several years, 5, while we saved up, and I finished school. Well, there were a lot of red flags that I completely ignored and forgave him for. I caught him sexting a coworker, and I had a deep gut-wrenching feeling about this new friend he began talking to. He met her through an Sparksmorp group. When he texted her "I miss you" during a romantic birthday trip I planned out for him, it became even more gut-wrenching, but I powered through it. Yes, I'm aware I was an idiot, but I loved him, and I honestly saw him as my soulmate and the man I wanted to be with. Things were amazing when they were great and horrible when they weren't, sort of thing. Well, we moved in a little bit after our 5-year anniversary. I moved states away from my family, left my job that I worked so hard to get my degree for, and I had no one as a support where we were. Not long after I noticed that he was very distant. To make a painful story short, he sat me down and told me, while holding my hand, that he cheated on me with her. Yes, that same friend that he told me not to worry about. That same friend he became so angry when I pressed him to stop talking to because it made me uncomfortable. The week that I traveled to be with him, we apartment searched and placed applications for several places, and towards the end of my visit I asked him about me extending my stay for a few more days. He shot me down saying he had to work and he wouldn't be able to spend time with me. So off I went back home. Well, he lied to me. He traveled several states away and cheated on me. That very same weekend we planned our new life together. He slept with another woman. It was supposed to be a one-time thing, and then they would go back to a platonic relationship with her once I moved in with him. I cried. My heart was shattered, and I couldn't believe he would do this to me. Well, it spiraled down from there. We fought non-stop, made up, had make-up sex constantly, had great times, and had shitty times. I left behind everything for him. I stopped low enough to look through his phone, his social media, stay up at night, and listen in on conversations with his gaming group when I was sleeping in the next room. This is the most blasé version of this, because there's so many other events that happened that pushed me to the edge. I was at the point contemplating ending my life by taking pain medication given to me when my kidney stones came around and landed me in the ER after a week of pain and constant vomiting from it. I was ready to just overdose and fall asleep peacefully. One night we got in the last fight. He went back on his word to teach me to drive. Sounds small, but even though we were civil enough to still live together, we were going to part ways once the lease was up. I was apartment hunting nearby, but the state we were in is not public transport friendly. I needed to drive to work. I needed this to be able to stay and try to stay where I relocated myself and make something come from this shit show. But he told me he wasn't going to, and that he hated me. This was the last straw. He broke me. So many promises, and the one thing I asked of him, the one selfish thing I asked for, he said no to after a fight. I called my family, and my eldest sister and brother-in-law drove 8 hours to come and pick me up that night. I packed all my shit up, took my dog, and left him. I'm so thankful for this, because when I came back home, my grandmother passed away shortly from COVID. which killed me, having to change her diapers, feed her by hand. This woman who raised me and was so strong became so frail within a few days. We said goodbye to her over FaceTime. I was able to see my grandmother healthy and then be able to see her before she left us because I left him. I still had hope though, because love isn't always smart. I waited for him to get his head out of his ass and apologize and cut that woman out. He tried to have an actual relationship with her, but she cut him off. Isolated him from friends he knew long before she did, and from his gaming group. Made up lies about him, and he finally realized what a snake she was. I ended up being not his second choice, but his third, because there was another woman who he tried to be with, but she moved to another country. She knew about me and didn't want to start anything because she was leaving countries. So of course I become his commodity, and he wants me now. I have my family with me. I have my dog who is more loyal to me than any other man has ever been. A new cat who I saved from work, and my company took me back with a bit of a pay raise. I feel okay now. Betrayal like that doesn't go away, and add on to that losing someone very close and depression being spurred on by it doesn't help. I think I didn't realize how bad it became until I looked at myself in the mirror and saw how dead my eyes were. I cried more that day, and every time I looked in the mirror. Now I can look at myself and see happiness. It's an uphill battle. I have good days and bad days. I still love him, but I also hate him because of how much he took from me knowingly. There's a light after all for me, and it's on my table. The picture of my grandma from a New Year's party all decked out with the proper props smiling, and a beer in her hand. I don't regret it ending, because I was able to see her again. I regret how it ended, because I don't know what could been changed, or how I could have changed so that it didn't end this way. If you lasted this long, thank you. This brought up a lot of memories that had me pausing, and it might be rushed with horrible grammar, so I apologize for that. I can give more details, but I didn't want to make this any longer than it already is. Thank you for reading my word vomit. My boyfriend of a year cheated on me with a MTF trans person and gets gonorrhea while I'm mourning the loss of a family member. I really hoped I didn't have to join the club, but here it is. I met his friends and his family before dating him. I took my time so I thought getting to know him before I gave him a chance. He was patient and understanding. He was there for me through so much and all the while making me laugh. I thought he was the guy I would end up with, and his mom thought that too. Then 2 weeks ago, he cheated on me during his lunch hour. He downloaded Grindr to find a transsexual person identifying as a woman, drove all the way to NJ, an hour away, waiting for her to finish cooking, and then proceeded to go into the bedroom. He let her be top and didn't use protection. After he was done, he left. Then he pretended everything was fine, and I was none the wiser. He started showing symptoms of unstandard this Friday, and he kept telling me he doesn't know what it is. He lied about going to the doctor, and I found antibiotics prescribed for unstandard in his jacket. He had the look of I got caught, then he found a way to lie. He said the doctor preemptively gave them to him while his results came back and figure out what he has because it's a general antibiotic. I have a medical background, and it made sense. However, I found out he went to unstandard center, so that's when I no longer trusted him. He swore up and down he didn't cheat, and there was no way he could have unstandard. I wanted to see the results myself this Monday. I told him I want a copy of the results, so I went with him, and that's when I see he tested positive for gonorrhea. I ran out of the building crying. We talked and he told me he had sex with a MTF trans person when we were not together, so it wasn't cheating. He said he could have been asymptomatic and then developed symptoms. Although that's possible, something wasn't right. I further investigated this and found that gonorrhea either shows no symptoms or it does. When it does, it appears within 2 to 30 days. I also got my annual OBGYN with standard screening in November and everything was negative, so the timeline didn't make sense. So Monday night I pressed and pressed until he finally admitted it was 2 weeks ago. He cheated. I couldn't believe it. He wanted to know what it felt like being with a MTF trans person, and he was afraid I wouldn't love or accept him. He was questioning his own sexuality for liking a MTF trans person, and his resolve wasn't to talk to me, but to cheat instead. He never planned to tell me he did that, and he only did because he showed symptoms. Honestly, I found out because I stood up for myself and found out the truth myself. Even when he showed symptoms he didn't think it wasn't standard and had sex with me, so I may have it too. Thank goodness it wasn't HIV. I spent all day Tuesday at the health center getting tested/treated, luckily tested negative for HIV. If he had no symptoms, I would have never found out and definitely contracted gonorrhea. The complications of untreated gonorrhea are pelvic inflammatory disease, infertility, scar tissue formation in the cervix. Things that would ruin my entire life. He had no regard for my safety or life. Thank you so much for watching the video. If you liked it, please consider subscribing. It really motivates me to make more of these videos. Have an amazing day.